I spent a lot of time in Warrington, back in 2018. Mostly high, sometimes drunk. Moving from squat to squat, from back room to couch. I was somehow always able to find a place to sleep, despite not having a lease to my name for the duration of the year. The town treated me well. There was always a house party going, a pub to drink at, a floor to pass out on. I took full advantage of the kindness of strangers and the goodwill of friends. It was in Warrington, though, that I began to hear talk of the Yellow Room. It was something like a kid's dare, but for grown-ups. Can you spend a night in the Yellow Room? Let's see how long you last. I had no idea what the hell the Yellow Room was, but I never met a dare that a couple of lines couldn't get me to try. I was at the House and Jockey with my friend Baz one night. Baz was a weird aging metalhead with a taste for quaaludes, but he was always a good laugh. We were downing pints of something rancid when he mentioned he might have some work for me. Before my switch to full-time fuck-up, I was trained as an electrician. Baz did some contractor work and floated me little gigs every now and again. Nothing huge, but enough to keep me in booze and pills. He had started laying out the deal when I overheard the words "yellow" and "room" mumbled behind me. Immediately I turned. A girl with a shaved head and what were either tattooed eyeballs or Halloween contact lenses was sat 3 bar stools away from us, chatting away with another lass with some kind of geometric design face tattoo. I turned back to Baz, who was clearly unimpressed that he'd lost my attention. "You want this gig or not, mate?" "Yeah, I replied. "I thought I heard one of those girls say something about the Yellow Room," he interrupted, rolling his eyes. "I keep hearing about it. What the fuck is it?" He smirked a little and explained it to me. In the outskirts of Warrington, there's a big housing development, or rather, there should be a big housing development. The company that was putting it together went bust in the 2008 financial crisis, leaving a big empty lot there, save one house. This was supposed to be the model home, the one that estate agents would show potential buyers in order to get them to sign on the dotted line. It has stood empty ever since the owners filed for bankruptcy, ignored and forgotten. Its future probably a footnote at the bottom of some 20,000-page legal document that no one's ever gonna read. This house has gotten a bit of a reputation. While it was initially a bit of a destination for tramps, junkies, and other ne'er-do-wells, they apparently stay the hell away from the place nowadays. One of the big reasons seems to be the Yellow Room. So the paint in the place is, or at least was, white. That's everything from skirting boards to walls, just pristine white. One room, however, had inexplicably been given a yellow door. It's one of the bedrooms towards the back of the house on the first floor, overlooking the giant patch of grass where 20 other houses were supposed to have stood. Something about this room scares the fuck out of people. So, of course, there's a dare. Can you spend a night in the Yellow Room? Let's see how long you last. It took me an hour and a half to convince Baz to drive me out to the house. It took me another 20 to get him to promise to come pick me up in the morning. The front door of the house was closed but unlocked, so I made my way inside, keeping an eye out for any security cameras or anything else that might cause me any trouble. Walking inside, I saw that some graffiti taggers had gotten to the walls already. I saw names, swear words, accusations of promiscuity, and crude depictions thereof tattooed on the walls of the model home. Slowly I walked through the house, finding the staircase and carefully ascended. The stairs creaked and buckled under my weight, but I made it up without a problem. Upstairs was more of the same. Spray paint tags all over the walls in the upstairs corridor, leading all the way down the hall, stopping about 6 feet before the last door, the yellow painted door on the far right-hand side. I twisted the handle and opened the door to the Yellow Room, and stepped inside. The following is my attempt at explaining what happened to me inside the room. I had the voice notes app on my phone all the time when I was in there, so I recorded myself talking. Some of the things I said in the voice recording conflict completely with what I remember happening. When there's a conflict, I printed whatever account seemed more plausible. 10:45 p.m. I entered the yellow room. I found myself standing inside a bedroom, like a student's bedroom with a desk and a bookcase and a bed. There was no graffiti on the walls here, which I noted as odd. It was on almost every wall in the rest of the house. I eyed the bed. I was feeling like I could get sleepy in the next couple of hours. I wondered if it was comfy. I hoped no one had fucked on it. 11:05 p.m. I realized that I had spent the last 20 minutes staring out the bedroom window, watching two rats fight violently over what looked like a chocolate digestive biscuit in the field outside the house. 11:06 p.m. I screamed as I turned around, and the haggard face behind me stared into my eyes. I felt a right arse when I realized that haggard face was in fact mine. I hadn't noticed there was a mirror on the wall of the room when I came in. Fuck, I cackled. Then I heard the creak. Turning around again, I realized that I had left the door to the room slightly ajar. Something in me decided that it would be against the spirit of the yellow room dare to keep the door open, so I decided to close it. As soon as I did, it creaked open again. So much for that. I sat on the bed. It felt cold. I reached down to feel the blanket, and it felt damp. I stood up again. My jeans were wet. I felt sick. 12 a.m. Midnight chimed. My arse was slowly drying off. I looked out the window again and saw that there was a dog sitting on the field, looking back at me. I turned around, expecting to see my face in the mirror again, but the mirror was so filthy that I couldn't see anything in it. I swear that just an hour previously I could see my own features as plain as day. 12:10 a.m. I looked through the crack in the door at the corridor outside. I wondered about the graffiti in the corridor, and I wondered why it seemed to stop some 6 feet before this room. My nausea started kicking in again. My stomach was churning. Something felt tight in my throat. I heard a dripping noise. I scanned the room, looking for the source, but finding nothing. 12:45 a.m. The dog had gone, and outside the window, all I could see was the empty field. The grass was swaying in the breeze, lit only by the moon. The dripping noise had only gotten louder. I looked around the yellow room, trying to find the source. My eyes glanced back at the bed, and I saw that water was dripping off the blanket draped on top of it. I patted my jeans, noticing that they had managed to dry off. I looked out the crack in the doorway. The far wall of the corridor seemed further away than before. My stomach was in knots. I dropped to my knees and began to dry heave, but nothing came up. 1 a.m. There was a man in the field. I could see him clearly through the window. He was dressed in a large brown overcoat and a pair of blue jeans. His face was angular and stern. He made no movements, simply staring up at me from the field outside. 1:15 a.m. I considered smoking the emergency joint I had brought with me in my pocket to try and take the edge off my nausea. I decided against it when I looked out the door again and saw nothing outside. Not the wall, not a corridor, not even darkness. There was nothing outside the room. 1:20 a.m. The window was gone. The window had been taken away. 1:30 a.m. The power came on in the house. The overhead light in the yellow room switched on immediately. I don't think the model house had ever been connected to the power grid, and if it had, it would have been disconnected years ago. Now the light was on, I could see details in the room I hadn't noticed before. The walls each had small holes drilled into them, some at eye level, some much lower. I tried to peer through one, but couldn't see anything. I also noticed that the far wall facing the bed was actually not there. and had never been there. And why did I think there was a wall there to begin with? Clearly the bedroom was much larger than I had thought. I stepped around the bed to investigate the rest of the room, and found it to be completely empty. My nausea was joined by a distinct feeling of sorrow. I felt sad that there was nothing in this part of the room, that it was empty and ignored. 1:45 a.m. There was a man watching me through the crack of the door. I couldn't see much aside from his withered, deep-set eyes. I stared back at him until he went away. 2 a.m. I wished that the window was still there. I knew I could climb out, and probably survive the drop to the ground outside. I thought I could take my chances with the man, or the dog, or the biscuit rats if I needed to, but I couldn't stay in this room much longer. The steady drip-drip of the water from the bed had become a trickle. I walked to the bed and felt the blanket. My hand passed through it like water. The blanket was dripping away. The bed was dripping away. Everything was dripping away. There was nothing left but the room. I reached for the joint in my pocket. I had no clue what to do otherwise. Instead, I pulled out a children's severed finger. I did not smoke it. 2:10 a.m. The nausea in my stomach became a shooting pain. I dropped to all fours again, and I threw up everything in my stomach. When I glanced down, I saw nothing but red. I looked up at the walls of the yellow room. They pursed like lips. Then they folded open and grinned. My iPhone went dead somewhere around this time. All I remember past this was a bright glowing light and my friend Baz standing over me. I was in the yard outside the model house. I'm told that I'm the person who has lasted the longest in that room. Or at least the person who has lasted the longest without dying. I was in hospital for about a week. I couldn't stop throwing up. I couldn't keep anything at all down. 3 days of IVs pumping fluids into my body, and I was able to eat soft foods. A few days later, I was fine to leave, crashing in Baz's back room until I was able to find myself a room to rent on my own. Every now and again, I wake up or come to, and I know that I'm in the wrong place. I look up at the ceiling above me and notice that the ceiling is a few inches higher than it should be. Perhaps one of the pictures on the wall is missing, or the couch that I'm sleeping on is pulsating. It takes me a few minutes, but I always come back to what I understand as reality. I spent a night in the yellow room, and now I'm carrying a tiny sliver of it with me.
Hello listeners, if you enjoyed this story, please check out the author in the description. For more content, leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more sinister readings.